We will call the Legislative Oversight Committee on Workforce Investment for Economic Development order. Clerk has already took a roll. We do have a quorum. We do not have any minutes. We'll approve our minutes from last meeting and this meeting next time. So we have two presenters today on accent program. The first one is Dr. Danny Twilley, Assistant Vice President of Brad and Alice Smith Outdoor Economic Development Corporation. So I was talking to him. I think he lives right here close by. He said he almost hit a golf ball from this building and stuff. So, Mr. Twilley, would you go ahead and start? You want?
We're going to present together. So. Okay,
and we also have, everybody I think knows Chelsea Ruby, the Secretary of West Virginia Development and Tourism. So we're going to present together. So welcome, Chelsea, and welcome, Mr. Twilley.
Great. Perfect. Good morning. Thank you all for having us. Like you said, I am Chelsea Ruby. I'm the Secretary of Tourism. And Danny is going to pass out some handouts, but if you all don't mind, I'm just going to jump right in and then we'll talk through the handouts. So first I want to start with a thank you. Over the last couple of years, I have come to you all a number of times on this remote worker initiative. The first time I came dealt with tax issues. We wanted to make sure that the West Virginia State Tax Code was up to date and was friendly for those remote workers around the country. The second thing that we came to you with was most recently was dealing with housing. As we've started to see this influx in remote workers and people moving into the state, we started realizing that we had housing shortages around the state. So we're well on our way to working on both of those issues. The first one I think we've conquered and brought our tax code up to par. The second one is the Build West Virginia program, which goes into effect this summer, but we're already working on it. So today what I'd like to do is give an update about the Ascend West Virginia program. So the Ascend is the nation's premier remote worker program. It is an amazing collaborative program that deals with the state of West Virginia, the Department of Tourism, West Virginia University, and two very generous donors, Brad and Elise Smith, now President Smith. So this has been going on for about a year now. So last April, a little over a year, last April, you'll probably remember Dr. Gee, Governor Justice, and the Smiths announced this program. It's a one-of-a-kind program. There was amazing amount of coverage nationally and internationally when the program was launched, and we've continued to see great success since then. Just to back up a little bit and tell you about this story, if you don't remember exactly the way it came together, the Smiths gave a transformational gift to West Virginia University of $25 million. Since then, the program has evolved. We've become partners at the state with the university on this initiative. The way that it works is those who are selected into the program receive a $12,000 cash incentive, a free year of outdoor recreation, which means that they get a booklet with passes to do rafting, skiing, zip lining, camping, any of the activities that those of us who live here have come to enjoy over the years. They also get 2 years of free outdoor gear rentals. So if they want to use a kayak or a bike, we've got those. They get access to free co-working space, so an area where they can go in and utilize the work facilities if they'd like to do that, and then access to professional development through West Virginia University. So that's the offer. Again, one of the most competitive offers in the country. The only program in the country that I know of that is based solely on outdoor recreation. So we know that our hook here in West Virginia is the outdoors. And we know that folks who have these types of jobs, from doing the research, we know that they are the types of people who want to be outside. Many of them are coming from larger cities, and they love the idea of being able to go on a walk at lunch, or to go kayaking after work, or to go skiing on the weekends. So we've leaned in heavily to that. Part of the reason why our office got involved is because we knew early on that the marketing for tourism would be similar to the marketing that would be needed here. So we've aligned all of those things, and the marketing is coming out of our office. So as I go through this, you'll recognize a lot of the images and stuff will look very similar to what you see on the tourism front. So today we're primarily going to focus on what's been going on here in Morgantown. That was the first city that was launched. Through the gift that the Smiths gave to West Virginia University, over time there will be about 1,000 remote workers, and we're looking to expand to 5 cities. But Morgantown was the first one, and so I'm going to start by just giving you some overview on the Morgantown program. There were 7,500 applications received for 50 spots, which is less than 1% acceptance rate. We received applications from all 50 states and more than 70 countries. And I'm going to walk through the back of this with you all and just give you some of the statistics so you understand who the types of people are that were accepted into this program. And then I'm going to give a little bit of an update on those who weren't accepted. And then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Twilley, who's going to talk to you about how the day-to-day of the program works and what those living here in Morgantown experience. So I want to first start, let's look at this side of the handout, if you don't mind. And this is just ascend by the numbers. So if you look, of those who were accepted, 23% of them are native West Virginians. So those are folks who left West Virginia for a job or another opportunity that we were able to bring back. 77% of them were non-native, so they had not lived in West Virginia before. As I mentioned, they came from 21 states, and there was one who came from Berlin. The top industries, this is one thing that I thought was really interesting. We sort of assumed, or at least I assumed, that most of these folks would be from big tech companies, and that even they would be from a lot of the same companies. There are a lot of Fortune 100 companies that have said that their workforce is going to be remote, and so I thought we would get huge numbers from those. But we've really seen a very diverse set of applicants. So you'll see there's healthcare, computer systems, manufacturing, management, and then professional services are the top industries. If you look down here on the companies, you'll see the same thing here. There are a wide array of companies, some of what you would think as far as tech companies, startups, but then we've also got places like Ocean Spray, United Healthcare, and Walgreens. So a huge diversity there. Educational attainment is pretty well spread out. And then if you look here, of the 50 or so that we brought in, they're going to be a total, they have brought with them, generally a little over 2 per person or per applicant. And so there's 110 people who are relocating in this first class to Morgantown. So we gave about 50 invitations, and that turned into 110. What I think is most interesting here is the type of outdoor activities. So the application for this program didn't just ask them about their jobs or about where they are currently living. It asked those things, but it also asked a lot about their preferences, what they like to do in the evenings, what they like to do on the weekends, the types of activities that they like. So here you'll see the top 10 outdoor activities. These are all the same things that we see on the tourism side and things that we advertise. But I do think that part of the reason we saw the phenomenal success that we saw with this first application opening is because this is what we promoted. We didn't promote any of the technical stuff. It was all about the quality of life that you can find here in West Virginia. And last but not least, the average salary of these ascenders, as they now call themselves in this program, is $105,000. One thing that is very unique about this program, and this was an idea that President Smith brought up early on in discussions, is he said, I don't want anyone to be told no. We want to give them the West Virginia no. So I mentioned there were 7,500 applications for these first 50 spots in Morgantown. We didn't tell any of them no. We gave them the West Virginia no. So what we did is we partnered with Rocket Mortgage and did $2,500 off closing costs for anyone who applied to the Ascend program. So instead of just getting a letter saying, sorry, you weren't accepted, they got a packet in the mail. It included this little package of seeds that says, plant your own piece of almost heaven. We hope you'll join us in the mountains soon. There was a letter from the governor. There was a letter from Brad and Elise. and there was a lot of information about how you can make the move to West Virginia, what an affordable place it is to live, and about this $2,500 incentive. Since then, we've kept in touch with those folks. We regularly email them, we mail them things, and our goal is that we continue to bring those who weren't accepted in the first round to West Virginia, whether they reapply for another round, another city, or they just make the move anyway. We know that from Rocket Mortgage, we have had several people apply for that offer, so I do think it was time well spent. And again, I think just an extraordinary sentiment from the Smiths that they wanted to make sure we weren't turning away anyone. Before I hand it over to Danny, I do want to give you all one statistic, and this goes a little bit more towards the tourism side, but you all know that every year when we present on tourism advertising, I also present on the effectiveness of that tourism advertising. And you've probably seen me give a similar slide like this before, because we found in recent years, not just in West Virginia, but across the country, that tourism advertising does more than just help tourism. It also helps the state's overall image. So this chart shows you what people think about the state as a place to live, a place to start a career, a place to start a business, a place to attend college, a place to purchase a vacation house, a place to retire, and a place to work remotely. So this was the first year we added work remotely on it. The dark gray is people who have not been exposed to our tourism ads before. And I think it's very interesting to see that there's a 43% positive sentiment there. So people are actually thinking highly about our state as a place to work remotely, as even compared to some of these other things before they see an ad. Then once they see one of the ads, it bumps up to 52%. So what this chart shows you, there's two main takeaways for me. One is that the exposure of this Ascend program is really starting to get some traction. People are really starting to think about West Virginia as a place to work remotely. But second, that these tourism ads layering on top of the remote worker ads are also starting to help with that. And we are continuing to improve West Virginia's image overall. And I realize this is a little bit off topic, but I think it's important to the overall investment that you all have made in recent years on the remote work side, but also on the tourism and branding side. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Twilley to give you a little information on how the cohort is doing now that we've got these 50 or so people here, and what the daily life here in Morgantown for those folks looks like.
Before Dr. Twilley starts, I told everybody, these mics are live all the time and they're pretty sensitive, so if you have any conversations, somebody probably will hear you online, so.
Yeah, thank you, Secretary Ruby, and thanks for the opportunity to be here today. So, you know, when we started building out this program and its initial kind of iteration, we really built it around this idea of community. So how do we bring people together, right? There's a core human value of sense of belonging, and you want to be connected to others. So that will be a theme that you'll hear throughout my talk today. So the idea of community, purpose. We know that people, this idea of giving back, helping make our communities better and giving through time and talent is important. And so we asked a lot of questions about that through the application process, and you'll see how some of that has manifested itself in action. And then the outdoors. We are blessed with topography here. We're blessed with beauty here, but you know, as we continue to leverage that, we still need to create more access and make it better in order to meet the growing demand in this area. And so we'll talk about what we're doing in that area as well. So here's some of the ways that they've really kind of engaged the community. And so one of the things that we'll do is that these individuals are working and volunteering their time from anywhere from the Morgantown Litter League. They'll go out and they'll self-form and they'll go out and help create, make our communities better. They'll volunteer at such events as Cheat, right? It's a very great support and fundraiser for Friends of the Cheat. We had several of our ascenders out there. They're volunteering for trail maintenance locally. And then this was a really cool thing that they did. This was a fundraiser. It was called Over the Edge. They formed a team together and they ended up raising $5,000 for that group. So when I say that they're coming here, and oftentimes we're helping facilitate some of this, but they're also doing a lot of this on their own. when there's a new business opening up downtown, you'll see, like the cereal bar was a great example. Through one of the ways in which this cohort communicates is through Slack. They'll post, hey, let's go support this local business. And that was all part of kind of our framing of this is we want you to give back to our local community. And to say that they're doing that in leaps and bounds would be an understatement. The other thing that they're doing is a lot of social events. This was part of what we had built out, was how do we engage them to connect them to the great things about West Virginia. And in order to do that, we need to do that intentionally. So remember when we talked about community, building community, part of what we do is organize, and some of these are what we consider very formal events, and some of them are a little bit more informal, where they're more gathering and doing it by choice. Slack is a big way in which this cohort communicates. So there's several different channels on there. If anybody's familiar with it, they'll just do, hey, need help. And simply saying when people will move here, they'll put need help. Can you come and help us? And this was recent, put together an entertainment system, and a couple of senders will come over and help do small things like that. They'll ask, hey, where do you go? Where's the best local doctor for X, or where's the dentist, or where's the mechanic? All of those things, what you have to kind of discover through time, this group is really helping each other kind of find their footing in a new community, because we know moving can be challenging, especially if you don't have deep local ties. So that's what they'll do. They'll even do things like, hey, going to go out and grab dinner at this restaurant. Anybody want to join? And so there's a lot of organic community development that's happening. But some of the formal things you'll see down here on the left, they actually were first place in one of the local breweries' trivia nights. They did that all on their own. So they have an Ascend Trivia group. They organized, and this was part of the rec package that Chelsea and her team put together. They took a group to Snowshoe this year. This was a very organized event where they went and actually went skiing together and had a blast. We've partnered with Morgantown Area Partnership, and they helped host in partnership with us an event at Gritstone, the local climbing gym, and a bunch of our ascenders showed up, and it was a mixing of kind of the business community and our ascenders as well, in a very casual environment. And this was a more informal event. This one here on the bottom is we are blessed to have access to some local cross-country skiing, and they'll just send out a message, and this was a Saturday morning where we helped provide them with some cross-country skis, and they all went out, and for some of them it was their first time doing it, and the laughter and smiles. And the important part of this is we don't always limit the programming to just the ascenders. We ask them to bring their families along, their significant others, because again, it's all about building that sense of community and sense of belongingness. And then I think one of the things that we should be most proud of is just recently they did an event called Ascend to the Trees. And they spent some time up at WVU's Outdoor Ed Center where they went zip lining, they cooked together, some of them camped together, and then they put them in a van and they took them down, kind of drove them through the Canaan Valley area, and they did some historical talks. And we partnered with Adventure West Virginia on that one because they take students and they talk about this idea of what does it mean to be a West Virginian and what does it mean to be part of the community. And so they spent 2 days together. There was over 25 different ascenders as part of that. And again, it was a great way to have them just kind of bond and spend time together as we lead into our favorite time of year. Many of our favorite time of the year is the summertime here. So outside of our programming, that is a huge, huge part. We do have local area coordinator. The gentleman here is Paris Winfrey. He is from West Virginia. We actually recruited him back. He was living in Thailand, and we recruited him back to be to help lead the local kind of experience coordinator, where part of his role is to help curate these type of events, both formal and informal. The other thing that we also are offering is co-working space. And so this is the former Cardello Lighting building that's kind of right down on the waterfront. This we picked this building very strategically. Is one of the things that was part of our value system is kind of being some of the change that we want to see. As we know, the beautiful Reynolds Hall is being built. There's a lot of great work in the Wharf District, and this building kind of sits right in the middle of those. And so we think that by bringing some life, bringing this type of energy there, it will continue to help that redevelopment. It's also right along the rail trail. So imagine, again, looking at the value system, to go for a nice little walk or put your headphones on and go have a meeting, or go rent a bike and go for a ride during your lunch. And it's right by the beautiful, beautiful amphitheater that's down there, and the kayak launch. The other part of this is about a block and a half away is kind of High Street. And so we want them to be able to feel comfortable, you know, going during lunch, to have access to those great restaurants and supporting our downtown businesses. So that was kind of some of our strategy in selecting this space, and we're working on the build out right now. Again, this is part of, we're thinking that this facility, depending on how they're going to use it, will be able to host about 75 to 100 individuals at any given time. So pretty excited about that. And then finally, the recreation. So within about a year period, we were able to put 3 new miles of trail on the ground. I think what I'm most proud, we're planning around 10 miles this year. Again, like all construction, it can be tough, but we're taking a look at some of our public spaces. And I think one of the great things about this, we were fortunate to win a trail planning grant by one of the national top trail planners in the country. They came here and they started looking at some of our green space and some of our connectivity. And it was a relatively complex project for them because of all the different small spaces that we have. They said once they kind of lifted up and kind of got that 10,000-foot view, they said, you all have something very special here. There are very few communities in the entire country that have the opportunity. And that's when the goal was to have a mile of trail within every house in Morgantown. And that's built on our nationally recognized Mon River Trail and Deckers Rail Trail. If you connect those with some of the other soft surface trails, we think we can have a trail within a mile of every house. And when you do that, a couple of things happen is that when you have access to trails, research shows that people will exercise 45 minutes more per week than if they don't have access. The second great thing too is that it has positive mental health outcomes as well. And so the research basically says if you can get people out for at least 20 to 30 minutes at a time, for up to 120 minutes per week, you'll see positive mental health outcomes associated with it. So that's why when we talk about access to our outdoor recreation and what really the opportunity we have here in Morgantown and even in other parts of the state is pretty tremendous. So that's kind of what we're thinking about in terms of the recreation work as well, is continuing to advance and make the community even better. When we first started working with Brad and Elise too, this was a really important thing because this is a way that we're also giving back to our communities as well. It will have tremendous tourism benefits, tremendous local benefits as well. So that was a really important value that both Brad and Elise had, or President Smith had, when we built out this plan. So that's all that I have. Yeah, do you have any questions for us that we can?
Do we have any questions? I have a few.
Yeah.
You said there was 5 locations potentially. What are the other 4 locations?
So right now we are in the process of Lewisburg right now. So we have had people apply, and so we're still curating that cohort. And so we are making some great progress in there. We're starting to build out a co-working space already in Lewisburg as well. And we're doing some recreational planning down there using the same format that we've done here. And so that's where kind of Lewisburg is. And the other locations we're still working through. It's a really complex process in which you have to go through. We have to get a lot of things in alignment in order for it to actually work and benefit the community. And still, because we have really one shot to get this right when we invite people here, because one of our big metrics is retention, and we have about a 50% retention is how we built the model, and so we want to make sure that we invite them here, and when they get here, they never want to leave. So we're going through that process right now.
And if I can add one thing, early on, before we had even named this program Ascend, when we were talking with the Smiths about it, Brad kept telling us he wanted to make sure that this program created a 55-strong approach, that this program didn't just help the 5 communities where we ultimately went to, but that it also supported and elevated the profile of the state as a remote worker state. As you saw from those research slides that I had about the state's image, I think that that is happening. But one thing that we found as we've been looking at it is that it is hard to find communities that can take 50 new residents and has the housing for 50 new residents who are in dual income houses where just the one person is making $105,000. So know that we're working to not only look at these 5 communities, but that we're also looking to support the other ones. So a number of other communities have launched their own programs. Charleston, Beckley, and Wheeling are 3 that we've worked with directly. If you are turned down for the Ascend program in that West Virginia no, we are sending those leads to them. So we're making sure that they get that information as well. And when we do the advertising, I mentioned that the State Department of Tourism helps with that advertising. We are promoting all of those programs to help and go along with that 55-strong approach.
Yeah, and I do want to add is, I think, when Chelsea mentioned at the very beginning the nation's premier remote worker program, we are the only remote worker program in the entire country that has multiple locations. And I think that is a great strength of what we're trying to accomplish here, is really turning heads nationally through the work of Chelsea's team and the marketing to say, I can be a remote worker and I can live in West Virginia and I have proximity to all these great resources. I think that's really going to be our long-term strategic advantage, because we are building this out across multiple locations, and no other program in the country has ever even attempted this. So we're learning a lot along the way.
Senator Trump.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you tell us a little bit about the marketing? I'm curious, because if you're drawing applicants from all 50 states and foreign countries, you've got some amazing penetration in the, notice of the program. I'm curious as to how that works. Is it internet-based, or is it television, or what are you doing?
Yeah, so I could probably give you an hour-long speech on this one, but let me try to make it short. So primarily, we have worked through public relations on this, meaning that the majority of the impressions, the majority of the viewership that we've gotten on this program has been through free earned media. So we have pitched every editor, every publisher in the entire country. We have had articles in nearly every major publication about this. We were able to get it in. The first article that was published the morning we launched was Travel and Leisure, that said this beautiful state is paying folks $12,000 to move there. Most recently, last week, I was talking to Wired, which is a print publication in the tech industry. All, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, all the major networks picked it up. So we've really been able to coast a good bit on that. Like I said, before we shut off applications in those first 6 weeks, we got over 7,500. So that's part of it. Public relations has been the #1 thing. On the digital side, what we've done is we are running digital ads. We are layering them in with tourism ads. So no one should be seeing Ascend ads that isn't also seeing tourism ads. We're retargeting off of both of the sites to make the dollars go further, because again, it's that same message. All the things that make West Virginia a great place to visit also make West Virginia a great place to live. So it's been a combination. #1 has been PR, and #2 has been digital ads coordinated with the tourism ads.
Well, and I love the West Virginia no. I think that's, if you got just a second, I'll tell you a story. During my tenure in the Senate, we've had, we have Cracker Jack interns every session who are undergraduate students at our state's colleges and universities. And we had one 6 years ago who finished her undergrad, went out of state to go to law school, has since got married, and she was, apparently, she and her husband were an applicant for Ascend, and they weren't selected, but, she let me know on the internet a couple weeks ago, they're coming anyway. They're moving to Greenbrier County. And, I don't know whether the West Virginia No was part of that, but, you know, you're having, some ripples beyond the people you're selecting. That's the point of that story.
Yeah, that's make sure she reaches out to us, make sure
Yeah.
you connect us with her. But I think if you think back to, and I don't want to go too far into it because I've already bored with many of you with this before, but in regular session, I had a handout when we were talking about Build West Virginia about that United Van Line survey that came out at the end of last year, looking at inbound migration into West Virginia. Remember, we were tied for number 3 with South Carolina. I went back as far as those records existed online, which was to about the 80s with that United Van Line survey. We had never even been in the top 25. So for us to jump from the bottom all the way up to number 3 is, I think, remarkable. I was in a meeting with the governor and a prospect last week that had to do with outdoor recreation, and we were giving an overview of all the things happening in tourism. We were talking about this Ascend program and about his company. This guy was from the West Coast, and he looked at the governor and he said, "Governor, it certainly feels like West Virginia is having a bit of a magical moment." And that kind of stuck with me because I think it's true. All of these things are coming together. We have, you know, these large companies who are looking at West Virginia, relocating in West Virginia. We have tourism growing. We have private development in the tourism industry. And now we have people wanting to move to our state for this quality of life. So I appreciate that story. Certainly we're seeing in other places and in the research every way we look.
Thank you. Hi, thanks, guys. Have you asked the cohort open-ended questions about what they need or what their struggles are here?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're doing, especially as we're in this learning phase, and now recognize that this is the first cohort, right?
Mm-hmm.
We always framed it as a pilot so we can continue to learn and grow and get better. That's one of the things, if you've spent time with President Smith and President Gee, they challenge us to do on a daily basis. And so we meet with our ascenders, probably Paris does, about once a month. And just looks about how they're going and what the transition's looking like. And as you know, everybody's going to have a little bit different experience kind of moving in. And so we're going to give us, in a couple months, we're going to be doing a little bit more of an open-ended type survey because we need to actually collect the data from the spouses and the kids that have moved because that's not the data we've collected. So we want to be able to ask more demographic data because we didn't ask that for various reasons. So we're going to get a much clearer snapshot of who our cohort is. And as part of that, that's what we'll end up doing. Now, we know that what we're seeing is about a varied kind of purchase. A lot of them are purchasing homes, which I think is a really big commitment, and rentals. So they've been doing relatively well in the Morgantown area. So we're checking in with them daily, and our thinking behind this is really once they're here, and they're here for about 6 months, for anybody who's moved recently, we know that there's some pains that are just naturally part of that. So let that kind of go by, let them get settled, and then I think we're going to get a much better information from them. So that's what we're being very intentional about when we ask and how we're asking that so we can get the best answers from them. So the answer is yes, but we don't have that very clearly outlined to this point.
And I have to give a huge compliment to the Ascend team here that's running this program on the ground. They are very involved, hands-on, helping them get their driver's license switched, helping them find places to live. You know, we have this huge, like, 50-page packet that tells them all the restaurants. If you're vegan, we want to make sure you know where you can go to eat, the different activities. I know we've helped find, you know, tutors for kids and all of that. So they are very, very, very tuned in to the needs of this group and really building relationships, which I think speaks to the type of people that are living here in West Virginia.
I have another question. And what was the average age? Do you know what the average age of these 50 people are?
Oh my gosh. we never asked that as part of our
Okay, just
initial
curious.
questionnaire, because for various reasons.
There's some reasons you can't, but I just thought,
Yep.
yeah.
No, I mean, I'll say this, I think we're getting a pretty good spread, honestly. We'll see, I mean, we have some people that are a little bit older, kind of the empty nest time of their life, and we have some people really close out of college, so.
Some of the pictures you showed looked like it was a wide variety, yeah.
It really is. I mean, we're seeing a great breakdown between genders, and we're seeing a great breakdown in terms of age as well. So we're really proud of that diversity that we have.
Senator Swoop.
I've got a couple items. One is, Chelsea, you mentioned that United Van Line's study I read about some months ago. Do you know if that was per capita or just total number of destination deliveries for?
I believe it's per capita, but I can check and get you the answer to that.
I've been quoting it some. I'd like to be able to
Sure,
be corrected.
sure, I can get that to you.
The other thing is an idea I heard some time ago. I first heard of it a few years ago. This was developed in Italy, addressing the housing issue. And since then, I've seen some examples close by. And that is, some cities have acquired properties that are not, maybe abandoned properties, not necessarily demolition. I've been working a long time trying to get demolition of abandoned properties. But not all are for demolition. Some are still habitable. City of Bluefield, for example, has acquired some of that property in neighborhoods that are bad neighborhoods, and then done the fixer-upper work they need to make it habitable, and given it to a police officer who works for the city to live in as long as he'll keep it up. And they're able to put policemen in neighborhoods to live there, and that's been a benefit.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if that kind of a concept might be applied into this program.
You know,
Where you could acquire some properties, not necessarily dilapidated, but inexpensive properties, that you could use that as an additional incentive.
Guys, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was not familiar with that concept until you mentioned it to me a few months ago. Certainly, I think it's something we should look into. The Build West Virginia Act would allow for that type of rehabilitation to structures. It allows you, as long as you've got at least 3 structures, they can be, you could take like a city block or a couple of blocks and consider it all one project by going into homes that need to be restored. So certainly, I think that's something that we're looking at with Build and probably with other initiatives, but I think the hope is that we can find some private developers to help us do that work rather than the state or WVU taking on that type of rehabilitation. But I do think it's a good idea and would serve a dual purpose to help clean up some of these communities and provide new housing.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question. The folks, the recipients that get the $12,000, do they make a time commitment to how long they'll be here?
Yeah, so it's a 2-year time commitment. That's a unique part of our program too. We figured it would take about 2 years for them to get to just fall in love with the place. And so what we do is equal monthly installments of basically we break $10,000 down over 12-month installments for the first year, and then at the end of the second year, they get a $2,000 bonus, and that's how it's done. And now that you brought that up, one of the things that we were really kind of curious about, because it's a great hook, $12,000, like that makes it a little bit easier, and it gets them interested. But when we were doing some of the analysis and interviews, that number was never really brought up. It wasn't what was driving them here. It was the story and the narrative of being part of West Virginia, this unique opportunity. And for us, that was a really great thing for us to know. And it also helped us understand why these individuals are moving here. It's not the money. It's just not. It's this really this sense of being part of something like Ascend, and getting the quality of life of West Virginia. I mean, they all talked about getting away and being able to go hiking right out their back door. I mean, that was the story over and over that we heard.
We had 7,500 applications to go through for this first round. So there were 7,500 people who raised their hand and said, I want to move to West Virginia. So we did an analysis of those, but then we interviewed hundreds and hundreds. I'm looking at Mark Gavin here in the back of the room, and Danny and I mean, we literally did 30-minute interviews with hundreds of these people. So from that, we were able to really pick people who wanted to be in West Virginia, who wanted to be a part of these communities. I mean, these are people who are spending their nights and weekends volunteering now and becoming a part of the community. So that's one thing that I think has been really rewarding about this program, is to watch it from start to finish. They started out as numbers on a spreadsheet, and now they're people who are fully integrated into the community. So I'm looking forward to future opportunities, you all being able to meet some of these folks, maybe having them at a reception or something at an upcoming interims, because I do think you'll be really excited to meet our newest West Virginians.
Thank you. You just touched on it a little bit, but what was the application process questions, and then what was your criteria for acceptance?
So we had it took the average person about 45 minutes to an hour to fill out the application. So we didn't make it easy, and we didn't want to, right? It wasn't about the number of applications. It was really about the quality. And so we did a series of different questions around kind of that, what's work like for you, right? So all those work questions and some of the stats that you see, that's where that's coming from. We asked about, what do they do when they're not working, anywhere from outdoors to volunteering. Then we asked some open-ended questions as well. So that was kind of the series of questions that we did. When I say it got vetted multiple times in multiple different ways, we had our data analytics team come in and help us as well, because of the sheer number of applications that we had. And we went through a kind of a three-stage application analysis. One was a quantitative. We looked at the numbers. Then we looked at the qualitative as well. And Chelsea is smiling because Mark, Chelsea, and I one night, we were up probably till 1 a.m. reading these qualitative answers. And part of it was because we just cared so much, but part of it was a really good, you get a great sense of who they are by the way that they answer those questions. And then we ultimately did interviews, and that was kind of the way that we built this out. The interviews, we did that in partnership. We invited someone from the local community as well to be part of that interview team as well. So it was a great breakdown where we were pairing up and we were interviewing. And when I say the team built out this great, we were interviewing people at 9 p.m. to meet their schedule. So when I say we have a committed team, that would be an understatement, the way that we built it out. So we were very thoughtful in that, and ultimately you have to make some decisions when it comes to who you want to invite. And so that was the process.
Thank you.
You said 23% of the people accepted from West Virginia. You know what percentage of the 7,500 are from West Virginia natives?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I would say this, my instinct would tell us that that breakdown kind of stayed true quite a bit, that 25-75 breakdown.
Okay. We have any more questions for our guest? Well, thank Dr. Twiller for being here. Always it's a pleasure to see Chelsea Ruby.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have more business for the committee.
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
We are adjourned. Thank you.